Hello, everyone. I am Deb Sherr, Artistic Director of Avaloch Farm Music Institute, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to Made at Avaloch, our new series created to celebrate the variety and excellence of the work Avaloch has supported. Each event will highlight one or two projects and will include discussions with musicians about process, as well as recorded performances of completed work. So far, Avaloch has hosted over 1,000 musicians in hundreds of groups and including dozens of composers. We hope you enjoy the diversity and depth of the genre and approaches to the creative process which will be presented here. Before we begin, however, I would like to thank a few people. First, our administrative team, Mason Donovan and Jenna Hall. Second, our musical team, Hannah Collins, Mike Compitello, Catherine Dowling, who joined me in creating these events. And last but certainly not least, Fred Tauber, without whose generosity the vision and inspiration of Avaloch would never have come to be. So thank you for joining us for this ongoing celebration of creative work made at Avaloch. Good. Okay, we're all here. Good. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome you. It's just great to see you, Daedalus Quartet, and to talk about your amazing, amazing work on George Crumb's Black Angels. So I thought maybe we'd start, first of all, if you wouldn't mind talking a bit about the piece. It's such an extraordinary piece, and I'd love for our audience to know more about it before they see your video. So if anybody would like to start talking about the piece itself and where it came from and what it's about.
Well, I think, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, George, in his notes for the piece, writes that he wrote it in tempore bello, so in time of war, I guess in the Vietnam War. And it reflects, I think, sort of a kind of uncharacteristic violence for Crumb's music. Crumb's music is so, he's got normally such a, well, even in this piece, he's got this connection with the tradition of music and this obvious inventiveness in sort of how he's producing sound. But what this piece, right at the beginning, you hear it, this a kind of an anger and, well, yeah, just a violence in the music that I don't associate with most of his other stuff. And I think all of us have had the occasion to sort of chat with him briefly about this, and he'll often say, I don't know what was going on in my head when I was writing that piece. It was.
Well, I think it was. He calls it a parable of the troubled contemporary world, and I think everybody can relate to that right now. So I think that's why it starts the way that it does. But it does have his characteristic. He even calls it like a musical DNA, which along with that opening kind of mirroring of the violence that was happening in the world, there's a deep kind of spiritual and mystical and ritualistic aspect to the piece. So it's 13 images from the dark land, and he really focuses on the numbers of 13, 7, and 3, though not directly 3 quite as much, but just it's divided in 3 parts. And so we say the numbers 13 a lot as if they're kind of like incantations, and we say the number 7 kind of like key moments. Structurally, he's built it around that. And so we've played this piece a number of times, but what was unique and really helped, it really helped me get into the spirit of the piece, being in that space at the Penn Museum, which really felt like, we were in this dome, there were, difficult acoustics, but we were kind of working with that and using that to create, have everybody in this sort of circle of creating this world of the Black Angels and I was just listening to an interview of George talking about his music, and so when he got inducted into the Musical or Artistic Hall of Fame in West Virginia, and he talked about other composers who influenced him a lot, but he also talked about time being circular and his love of the Hindu kind of image of circularity. And so the dome that we played in, the rotunda, the Chinese rotunda, really reflected that everybody was in it together. And we weren't so much just performing for them, we were all experiencing the, kind of the ritual and the spirituality of this piece, I think, kind of going through this process together. And then it's easier to shout the numbers. You feel a little bit less self-conscious about that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was, and with the shadows.
Having watched the video, I was astonished at how incredibly perfect that setting, that venue was for that piece. Mm-hmm. It was so powerful. I mean, we'll see it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah. No, I mean, as you're alluding to, I mean, there is a very theatrical element to this piece, and it's easy for that to feel a little bit, in some performances, it's easy for that to come off as an afterthought. The speaking and the shouting, that we're focused on the playing and all the moving parts of that. But I think, given this setting and being able to work with a lighting designer on this, like to really embrace and enhance the theatrical element of this piece was a very special experience.
Well, and we also had the opportunity to work with a theater coach, someone who could actually help us feel. It wasn't our first time playing the work or performing the work, but that help was really amazing. And I think that was one of the aspects of being at a university where you could really draw on collegial resources, as well as, of course, the Penn Museum, the rotunda that we're talking about, the Chinese rotunda, was available to us because we're in residence at Penn. But yeah, the coaching on the kind of different languages that George uses, and yeah, just embodying this kind of dramatic presence that you're not always asked to do as a run-of-the-mill classical quartet. That was really, I think, helped shape this as a memorable performance for us.
Yeah. Well, that brings up the whole idea of your process in general. It's interesting that you used a theater director with this particular performance, but where did you start in your exploration of how to work on this piece? What were the things that you had to bring together? I mean, there's some of obvious, like using, wine glasses and gongs and things, but tell us about that, the whole process of learning it.
Well, it began actually we were originally going to work with a different director, and I had written a grant based around working with an opera director, actually. But that aspect of it fell through. But then, and he's somebody who's based in New York, but through a friend who's in the theater arts department at Penn, she introduced me to another Philadelphia artist, puppet director. She's the one who designed the lighting and all the shadow work, using us kind of as puppets in a way. So Sebastian Mundheim was the person who we ended up collaborating with, and it was a good fit for that space. She had worked in there before on a different project, or worked in the museum before, so she was familiar with some of the issues there. And it was really in an effort we were creating a whole program that was really site specific around the rotunda and trying to bring different parts of Penn and Philadelphia together in a really, meaningful, satisfying, interdisciplinary, collaborative kind of way. And so that was the grant. And then while I was writing the grant, I think we also applied to do a very short but important residency at Avaloch to help. There are so many moving parts to this piece and also to this program, which was theatrical on many levels. There was also a whisper play, which involved the audience all whispering together. And it was a piece that was written with that space in mind. So we wanted to have a time dedicated to really just working on finding the acoustic of the piece with the amplification, practicing it without being distracted by an incredibly long to-do list of everything else that we had to do. So, really doing our work as artists. And Avaloch really allowed us to do that. And that was part of the whole planning process. And then when we actually had to execute, it was great to be in Avaloch.
I think maybe important to mention also for us is that although we are in residence at Penn, we don't all actually live in Philadelphia. And so when Avaloch was such a blessing for us because it gave us time in the same space without having to deal with a fraught commute for two people, which is our reality every day. Every rehearsal involves people moving, and train schedules and babysitters and dinner on the table and all that kind of stuff. And Avaloch, those things may sound mundane, but removing those parts of the picture for us was huge. And giving us a studio, like not having to wonder if we'd book the right space, and giving us a place where we could leave all the tech and not transport it back and forth, which in a piece like this is like, it's so big. So that was really, we were thankful, like right from the get-go, also for having somewhere like where the food is so amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember for the sharing that you did of the work you were working on, we went to your studio, as I recall, because there was no way you were going to move on into the common there. So that we went in there to see where you had gone, and it was amazing to see everything that you had around you.
I remember that also being very loud. Sorry about that.
It
involved a lot of amplification in a small room.
Yeah. And what was it like also, the different aspects of it, the choreography of it, to learn, to go to use the bows on the goblets and the gong, and putting that part of the learning process in it, besides just, learning notes. How did you approach that?
That was something we had to do in the space, and unfortunately we couldn't really prepare for that at Avaloch because it's that aspect of theater, and we needed to know where in the space we were going to be setting things up. I can't speak to the bow glasses because I just sat in my chair the whole time for that.
Right.
Yeah, just we didn't have the tam-tams at various places. We have to bow and strike tam-tams in this piece, and that also, I don't think we had those at Avaloch, or did we? I don't think we brought those up. We certainly didn't bring up the big one.
I don't think we brought the tam-tam. We brought some of the other smaller things that we could do. There are a lot of things that can break in this piece. So mostly we try to not drop things, but not beyond that. So there was a lot of work involved in thinking about the production. And I was essentially the producer. So just thinking about where everything was going to be laid out, gaff tape everywhere so that people aren't tripping. And then I think, and a lot of, felt around, but just, being very conscious. We also had extra wires because I thought it was really important because of the ritual and ritualistic and kind of incantation aspect of the piece to have our voices mic'd, amplified, as well as our instruments. Because usually people just amplify the instrument and hope that it will pick up your voice if it's a mic that's on your instrument, or they have a they have a stand mic that they're trying to speak into. So we had headset mics, so that added another layer of. But you know, it's sort
Things
of
to
like
not
doing
trip over.
walking. Yeah, of things to not trip over. It's a little bit like doing walking meditation. You're just very mindful of every step you're taking so that you don't trip and mess it up.
With several hundred people watching you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
The big problem in that space was that there's only one outlet.
I was waiting for someone to mention that.
Maybe Tom can talk about the other circular aspect of this piece with the amplification.
As being in a room in a museum that's, you know, that's open every day, we could rehearse in there, and then we had to strike everything after we rehearsed. So we would always set it up, plugging in, you know, various extension cords, and have this big, it wound up being a big loop of power cords going to all the amps and speaker and the PA and everything. And on the day of the performance, we were getting a radio signal through that loop, which apparently is something that just happens when you set up a giant antenna on the floor. Then you get the radio. And so fortunately, we had also, so all this stuff has to, by the way, all this stuff has to do with Penn. Theater person we worked with is the head of theater at Penn and the Penn Museum, and we were also, and George Crumb was.
We're losing you,
Tom.
Tom.
For years. Uh-oh.
Just repeat what you last said. George Crumb.
Just say all that again.
Okay. Wait, did we get the stuff about the big antenna? Okay, so George Crumb was also, for many years, very influential composition teacher at Penn. But we also had access to Eugene Liu, who is the head of music technology at Penn. And he's just an incredibly smart and patient man. And so all the things that were going wrong, where I think we would have been just tearing our hair out, he's just like, okay, well, we'll just try this. We'll try plugging this in. And so finally it did work. But yeah, it was.
Yeah.
There
were a lot of headaches involved.
This was a full community effort, obviously. Really.
Yeah, also we had all the lighting from the theater arts department because we didn't have that in the budget. And so, you know, they were kind enough because we had done other projects with them and they trusted us. So they were kind enough to let us borrow all the lighting that we used, you know, and the I don't know about the gels, but at least the lighting, that was the important part.
Yeah. Well, that's incredibly lucky, and it makes for an unbelievably powerful performance. And what about the music? Just cut away from, I mean, it's an extraordinary piece, it seems to me. I mean, I knew it way back. I'm old enough to have heard it not long after it was composed, and it was pretty mind-blowing at that time. And I just think it goes to so many different places. Can you talk about your experience of the music itself? And also the score. It must be, I've never seen the score, but knowing George Crumb, it must be an incredible score to look at.
Yeah. Each of us has made a different version of it that will fit. I remember, I think my first time playing this, I think I was pregnant and I lost it somewhere. Like I had made all my bits and pieces to it, and then I left it in a grocery store in New York. And thank God I managed to trace my steps back to it. Yeah, it was really, I was like 4 minutes away from calling Jesse and being like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. The idea of playing it, you know, kind of on a clean copy wasn't very appealing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's visually stunning, actually. I mean, it's a piece of visual art really to look at. But it does take some getting used to reading it. I mean, I think all of us were pretty generous with the highlighter use, you know, play this, not this, you know, and but
actually, that's actually an aspect of the score. So it's actually very pragmatic the way he writes it. That when we all have the same note, often we'll just all be in the same line, and then you'll see, maybe this is a PDF that can be shown, but you'll see a place where we kind of split apart and you just follow your own sort of diagonal score line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's beautiful, but it's actually not as difficult to read as you might think.
Right.
It's not
It's,
or something.
No
Oh
circles
yeah,
in
he
this
has
one.
other pieces like that.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be adding to it. Yeah, and tell me about your feelings about the piece in general.
Well, it's he really calls on you to. I feel like he really trusts you as a musician to learn how to play the piece. So it's not like another piece where you've been training. There are challenges, to really bring out the essence of Mozart. To bring out the essence of George Crumb, you have to learn how to, make new sounds and learn new techniques. But, you've been training all along because your ears are trained to say, oh, I need to practice that. You know how to practice something, and you know what you want it to sound like ultimately. So you'll find a way to get there. And, he gives you enough tools. He's really, really crafted the piece carefully in that way. Like everything's extremely well thought out, that all the things work that he says. You just have to practice it a lot in order to do it. And actually, it's really, really fun. And it just stretches you in a way that makes you feel like more of a musician in a way. When we play kids concerts, a lot of times kids will ask, well, how many instruments do you play? And, I often feel bad just saying, well, I play violin and viola, which is very similar, and a little bit of piano, but, but in this piece, you get to play a lot of instruments and it's great. And, I think there is an aspect to George. He's a spiritual and mystical composer, and he's also really in touch, I think, with this kind of childlike sense of play in music. Like he wants you to play. He wants you to play with the instruments. He wants you to play with thimbles and paper clips and glass rods and make this amazing piece by playing around with this very well. But it is going back to that essential thing of play. So it's really fun to play. It can be frustrating, but it is really fun.
I always find this, I know I always love I know I love the piece, and I know I love the sounds, and I find the process every time very, very humbling. Because I guess the physicality of it doesn't stay with me. And of course, like now that I'm saying these words, of course it doesn't stay with me in the way that, other things do, because they have been in my hands much longer, or they're so similar to other, other repertoire is much more similar to other repertoire. You know what I mean? It's much more similar to other things. And the uniqueness of this, it really stands out in my head, but also remembering not to freak out every time it comes back up, and that, you will get there, or maybe you'll get a little further every time. A little closer to the sounds he wants. I find that an inspiring, but yes, a very humbling process.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's a good experience in your career to keep recommitting to someone you respect as much as I think we all respect him, to just keep working on the challenge, even if you don't get quite as far as you wish you had.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this in a negative way, but I've now that I've seen this live, also heard this live, I've watched other people struggle also, and thought, yeah, it's not, some of these things are not, they're just not intuitive to us in the way that like an arpeggio is. And you just have to keep at it. Anyway.
Well,
there.
Yeah, your performance of it is absolutely stunning, and
Thank you.
powerful, amazing. So why don't we watch it? Well, having watched that incredible performance, is there anything else about the piece that you'd like to talk about and touch on?
I think one thing that I hope people hear in this piece is sort of the diversity of influences of Crumb's music. The thing I remember him saying when he's talking about, 19th century music, 18th century music, he just says, "Oh, I like it all." Tchaikovsky, Monteverdi. It's just all I like it all, I find that, going along with the obvious modernism and the sort of iconoclastic stuff that's happening in the piece, the fact that now you hear Schubert, and now you.
Yeah. Oh, we lost you again.
Okay. Yeah,
Well,
well,
we
I was
lost you
mumbling
just
anyway.
Yeah,
After
just
Schubert.
after
Oh.
yeah.
yeah, when Death and Maiden comes in, it really is your heart stops.
Yeah.
It's an amazing moment, and all the sort of ancient music that you hear going through it. Amazing piece, extraordinarily played by you guys, really.
The performer's heart stop also, because that's when we're trying to play. And we're like, oh my God, why is it happened before? Stay calm, stay calm.
Yeah. Just keep going.
Right.
Like this is an aspect of what Min was talking about before, which I hope people felt watching it at home, this ritual that it's not, it's sometimes we start thinking of music as like an athletic event, which it is, in which, you either get it or you don't, you either, you do the double axel, I don't know what it is. But I think of this more as being like, you're always, as Min said, we're all audience and performers, we're all performing this together, and what happens. We're making an effort to play this, but the fact that it's a little out of tune when we play the Schubert is part of it.
Right. That we played this for George turned 90 in the last fall, I guess, and we played it for his 90th birthday, and there was a pianist in the audience, Zach, who was saying, he thinks that if that particular part, the Schubert part, which is maybe one of the most frustrating parts, at least for me, but when it's, when you get it right, it's just so satisfying. But in performance, he was saying, I thought it was great because it, he was being positive. He was saying, if it's a little shaky or out of tune, it just brings out the human kind of fragile, frail quality. If it sounds too, like if it sounds perfect as a band of viols, then it loses that. It doesn't, it's not about being perfect. The ritual is not about, it's not quite the same as like having a magic potion where if everything's not quite right, poof, oh damn, that didn't work. But it's about moving people and moving the spirit, and you can still do that even if it's a little out of tune. Maybe not if you break a lot of glasses, but
well, it's there's an otherworldly feeling to some of this, that you're taken out of your normal listening, I think, also, just in terms of playing, but in terms of listening, it really is quite extraordinary. Anything else that you'd like to say about this wonderful piece and the experience of working on it?
Well, I like what you were saying about how it's very otherworldly, and I think he's really going for that. Having met George a little bit and especially heard him talk, it's just wonderful to see. He is so down to earth when he's talking. Well, after the first performance where he heard us play, which was for his 85th birthday, his main comment was, "Those glasses were really fine crystal. I could tell."
Goodwill. They were from Goodwill.
But that someone who's so down to earth can, reach for this other world so successfully is it's kind of inspiring. It's really inspiring to be a part of that process. I think that, for composers and other people, you don't have to be a certain kind of person it's your imagination and and he really draws from his that down to earthness, I think, comes from his roots too. So there's just so many, ways to just be yourself, and we all need to hear your voice, I think, in this world.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of putting it. And I just want to thank you so much for being part of this Made at Avaloch event, for one thing, and for sharing that really stunning performance of an extraordinary piece and your feelings and process. It really is a wonderful thing to share with our community. And I wish you all well. I hope
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Deb.
you.
get to be together and play together. What have you been doing in this crazy time? Have you been able to do any work together in these horrible different formats? Or
I mean, we've done some interviews like this, and we've done some virtual lecture demos and putting together recitals out of archived content. But we're going to run out of that soon.
Yeah.
We did play Happy Birthday for a young
That's
fan.
right.
That was our only layering project.
So far.
So far.
Right.
Yeah. With the semester ahead, we're looking at seeing if young composers are interested in writing for this format. But it's hard. I mean, I think we appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about things that were good and to feel a sense of community. It's really appreciated.
Well, great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Very appreciative, and it's great to see you. Can't wait to see you again, hopefully at Avaloch in the future.
That'd be great.
And
Great to see you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Be healthy, be safe.